Welcome to the Making Health Doable podcast. I'm Cheryl Borchardt.
And I'm Sarah Shaw.
And together we're your hosts on this journey as you learn what it takes to live well.
We are dedicated to tackling topics that empower you to make massive progress in your health and wellness journey by using our pillars of health: eat well, move well, live well, and respond well.
At Doable Health, our mission is simple: to help everyone live well. As a team of physicians, board-certified health coaches, and law enforcement experts, we're here to serve employees and first responders with coaching, workshops, and masterclasses designed to conquer stress, anxiety, and burnout.
But our dedication doesn't stop there. We're also committed to improving wellness for individuals like you by offering at-home lab testing and personalized coaching to support your unique needs.
Because whether you're an employee, a first responder, or simply an individual seeking better health, we believe that life can feel better for everyone when health is made doable.
So join us as we embark on this journey together, where we'll provide you with the tools, insights, and encouragement you need to thrive.
And stay tuned for enlightening discussions, expert interviews, and actionable advice that will inspire you to take charge of your well-being and live your best life.
Until next time, remember, life can feel better when health is made doable.
Before we begin, we have an exciting new offering from Doable Health: at-home lab testing with our integrative health practitioner, Janine Finelli.
I'm Janine Finelli, integrative health practitioner, National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach, and VP at Doable Health. We offer at-home functional lab testing for individuals to test and not guess when it comes to their health. Whether you are interested in a deep dive under the hood because you love to geek out on numbers and want to really focus on moving forward with prevention, or you have symptoms, brain fog, digestive issues, hormonal imbalances, insomnia, low or no libido, water retention, headaches, all sorts of things that you just cannot figure out where they're coming from, through our at-home functional medicine lab testing with the best of the best labs out there, we can help give you answers. Schedule your initial consult with me so you can test and not guess by going online at doable.com/test. And for a limited time, get 10% off your initial consultation by using the code PODCAST in the checkout screen. doable.com/test.
So today we're joined by Macario, who is a retired law enforcement officer, and for over 2 decades, he instructed law enforcement officers at the local, state, and federal levels on a wide array of subjects, from edged weapon tactics to verbal de-escalation techniques. Mac also served as a distinguished member of Wake County, North Carolina's Crisis Intervention Team for over a decade, where he held the position of lead de-escalation trainer. He has been recognized for his expertise on de-escalating situations involving individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Mac has also had a 20-year background as a self-defense and combative instructor, operating and owning his own schools. And Mac is currently Doable Health's chairman of First Responder Initiatives. Welcome, Mac. I'm glad to have you today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I didn't recognize that guy you were just talking about, to be honest with you.
Oh, I could go on and on. I think you have so many wonderful things that you've experienced and been part of, and we will definitely link your full bio to this podcast episode. So, Mac, before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you could have any view from your office, what would you choose?
Oh, so it's an interesting question because I was at the old academy forever, which was not a pleasant, structural facility. And I had a view of a brick wall, and then we could eventually just barely get into the new academy, but it was this group office cubicle setting. And I never really had an office until now. And I'm actually going to pick my computer up here.
Yes, please. I want to see.
Like we do right here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you started out outside, and I saw that view and I said, oh, So you're living the dream office view.
The chance a bald eagle will come by here at some point, and I'll be so easily distracted. So, but they come and grab fish out of the lake, and it's so I sit here and I think like, where am I? How did I get here? So,
Oh, I cannot imagine. I've seen a bald eagle one time at our local lake in Georgia, and I thought I was seeing things. We see osprey all the time because they,
okay.
sometimes they look similar, but what a wonderful.
This entire town is actually a bird sanctuary, so they just go out of their way to to maintain the habitat here. So blue herons come by, and we have every version of warbler and everything. So it's just magical.
Ah, what a gift. Yes, it's such a wonderful thing to get to experience every single day. So today we're going to talk about and dive into our Respond Well pillar with Doable
Yes.
Health. And I'm excited to talk with you through some of the things that you've experienced in your extensive career in law enforcement and just how we're bridging that with what you're doing at Doable. So if you'll kind of engage with me on this, how did you become interested in first responder health and wellness?
Well, when I first got into law enforcement, and I took a less traditional route, so I didn't even get there until I was in my mid-30s. I wanted to do it in my early 20s. I was getting ready for some fighting competitions, and I blew my knee apart. And I had multiple surgeries, and I then attempted to try out for the highway patrol. And it's not really a pass-fail, but you get a score, and my score wasn't good enough to get me in. So I all but gave up on that dream and then pursued other things. But I had started to build a combatives program and had a big school. And then we had lots of kids. And I would just tell the parents, hey, I'm going to give life lessons. It's just part of the deal. And so I would always tell them, you can do or be anything you want as long as you're willing to put in the work and so forth. And then I realized one day, like, I'm not doing that. So now I'm in my 30s, I'm in much better physical shape. And my son, ironically, was a big part of this because I was a retail manager at the time, and he just didn't care about anything that I did for work. And I went in one day, and he was single digit years. And I said, how would you feel about your dad being a cop at this point? And he said, that would be amazing. And kind of the deal that I made with myself was, listen, this family depends on you. I was the sole earner. And if I'm going to do this, and not really understanding the job yet, but I knew there would be an element of danger. I'm like, I've got to be as physically fit as I can all the time. More than rehab, I need to start becoming proactive so that I don't experience injury. And when you first get your uniform and you realize how unforgiving the pants are,
Yeah.
it doesn't take long if you let yourself go to be very uncomfortable in your uniform. So I'm happy to say that the day that I retired, I could still wear the same pants that I did when I graduated the academy.
Oh my goodness. So you made it a priority in your own life, number one, to be the best that you could be physically. What about all the other things we hear about? We know physical health is so important, but just even as far as law enforcement and first responder jobs go, a lot of the things they deal with can be more than just physical. I mean, that's such a big piece of it. How are some other ways that you took care of yourself during those times?
Yeah, it's interesting because now I think I had an advantage because I was in my 30s and I had life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I had seen some death and stuff before, like with family members, but you never really know how you're going to react to things that you see. Like while I was on field training, saw my first gunshot in the face kind of deal. And you just don't know until you see it. Like you can see it on videos and training. So there's an emotional and spiritual component to that you just aren't really going to know till it happens. And then you have to figure out, like, have I prepared adequately for this? Do I have the necessary support? Am I going to be able to work through these things? And through the grace of God, I literally was not fazed by the things that I saw. And I lived about a half hour from home. So I would have this half hour every day to drive home from patrol where I could kind of let go. It was really interesting because my son, when he would see me, as I would come home in uniform, he would run up and like, what did you do today? And I would pray, God, just let me let this stuff go so that I can be centered and focused on my family when I get home. And a lot of times I couldn't remember, but we always had to keep a log of things. So I would often look at the log unless something really dramatic happened. So I'm going to credit that with just kind of getting there in my mid-30s. But when you look at the kids that come in at 21, 22, without that, like maybe right out of school, or maybe it's their first real full, we traditionally as a profession have not done well to prepare them for that. So much of law enforcement in general is a reactionary model. Policies are written after bad things happen. Like we joke that almost every policy in our agency was written about somebody and something that they had done. Mental health, like they didn't even discuss officer wellness, officer suicide, trauma and things as they would affect you as an officer. Even in the block called the mental illness block, as I came through the academy, they didn't even mention it because I think there was this idea that if they did, they would somehow exaggerate the problem, when it was exactly the opposite, where we needed to talk about this stuff very early on. And fast forward a little bit, I did really great on patrol, gravitated toward mental health calls. And then after about 6-7 solid years of patrol work, was approached by the training director, who knew that I had a master's degree and that I had some life experience and knew that I had a combative school, so that I had an element, and asked me to come to the academy as a full-time instructor because the agency ran academies full-time. And of course, I'm like, no, like I am not qualified. I've only been here, 7 years, even though I just hammered it for that. I was just every call. Like I never even took a dinner break. I think I took 2 dinner breaks in the 6+ years, even though you're supposed to get one every day. But I just didn't want anyone to have to cover my area and do my work. And ultimately, they kind of did this behind the scenes and talked to my family before they asked me to, and get them to encourage me to take it, because they said he's going to say he's not ready. I guess they kind of knew my personality. When I got there, not at all prepared for the responsibility that you would feel for essentially adopting, 20 to 50 kids every 7 months, whose like literal existence in this profession depended on what you taught them. So to get back to your first question, we're immediately charged with their physical health, their emotional health, their spiritual health, if they go that way, their preparation for how they're going to deal with the job, their preparation for how they're going to talk to their family about the job. All the pillars, interestingly, that Doable Health, does so well. The irony is, in the 7 months that we had them, and we had about the longest academy in the States, when they left, they were in the best physical shape. They knew the law, they knew the tactics. All of their gear was brand new and their uniforms were fresh, and they were as ready as a person can be. And then you would see literally within a year, those who kind of embraced wellness and preparation and continued on a path upward, which was a fairly small percentage, and those who, another fairly small percentage that just plummeted. Like some of them wouldn't even come back to the academy because they were so embarrassed to face us, because they had changed uniform size already, or their gun belt was so far below their waistline that, and they would never polish their brush. They would never iron their uniforms, nothing. And then there was that kind of middle percent that just decided, which would probably 60% of the officers out there, that just would be like, I'll do the job the best I can. But what they realize is time is a huge resource, because you're working upwards of 50 hours a week. You don't get paid that much, so there's often secondary work. So all like a health club membership or combatives lessons, like rolling out of jiu-jitsu school, number one, you can't afford it. Number two, you don't have the time, and any extra time you probably want to spend with a significant other. So many officers go out into the field and they're just hoping that nothing, really catastrophically bad happens to them. They're sleep deprived. They're financial stresses. They're coping with whether or not they can handle the things that they've seen. Because big agency, small agency, rural, urban, it doesn't matter. You are going to see some horrendous things fairly early.
Oh, yeah.
And, I've seen people do well and figure out ways through it. And I've seen people, after their first exposure be like, I can't do this work. And then they're just, so thankfully over the time, I've seen the state and other agencies kind of decide that wellness for their officers is a huge priority. They talk about hiring because everybody's short, and then they talk about retention. And everybody says, yeah, like, oh, we're all invested in officer wellness. But then the question is, well, what are you doing about it?
Yes.
How do you actually work?
Yeah. I asked that question yesterday at a regional meeting. I talked about that. I mentioned the agency members, the chiefs that were there, and I asked them that question, the first thing. And I said, are you currently using a health and wellness program? And if you are, how is it working out? Is it doing what you want it to do? So that might help us as we explore this a little bit more. And we know, yeah, like you said, retention is huge right now. It's very difficult to keep officers. It is also very difficult to get new ones, and a lot of agencies are short-staffed. How could you see a robust health and wellness program support some of this and help this to improve? Is it, or could it? Is it important?
Oh, number one, 100% important. And I think it's moved from something that's optional to something that's absolutely necessary, vital to keep these people going through. One of the big carrots is that there is a pension at the end of this, but it's usually about 25 years or 30 years. And the person in their second year cannot possibly, they can't see past the weekend. So yet alone to see, 25 years down the road. And then what would a version of themselves look like? And so once again, I got super blessed because at the academy, you had to exercise. You got exercise built in your schedule every day, and then you PT recruits every day. So you were always active, and it was much easier to kind of keep pace. When I retired, which was 3 years ago, I thought, well, I don't have that built in. I've got to absolutely adopt, something personal for myself. So as healthy now, I think, as I ever have been. And it's similar to the motivation I had when I first got there. Like, I want to go to the next chapter to this point. So I figured all this out myself. To answer your question, number one, it needs to be hit right at the academy level. So there's how long is the physical fitness block? It's probably only a day or two. And it includes teaching them how to pass the police officer physical abilities test, which they have to pass at the end. And it's a basic on, here's what systolic blood pressure is, here's what diastolic is, here's average heart rate, but it's antiquated. It needs to be redone. And it doesn't really help them design anything for themselves. So if they have a good academy staff that they have a good relationship with, they might get it through that. So every year, officers are mandated to go through in-services that the state requires, but it'll be things like, legal updates and often some sort of sensitivity training to different populations but like true wellness, it just never comes up. And they have this general topic called career survival, and they stick different things on.
Ooh, I can't imagine what that's like.
I joke about it all the time. Like, who wants to survive their career? Like, you hope to survive a rash or a tank, whatever, but like, you want to come out as champ. You don't want to like, oh, God, I survived. Now what?
Barely made it through.
But it actually fits in kind of the way, the materials that they give them, because they don't really provide you anything that's going to help you do more than survive. So that's where like Dooable comes in, and a lot of municipalities have adopted different health apps. And I think maybe the assumption is that in today's culture that's so tech heavy, that the app will appeal to young professionals. But I will tell you, I can't tell you one person, and I specifically ask them questions like, have you used the app and are you better because of it? And the answer is like, no, I don't use the app. So therefore it is, the second question doesn't even apply. But
it's a check in a box, like and I get it. Like, they're trying to do something and we don't fault them for that, but it's not achieving what it could, a program that's robust and high touch could really make a bigger difference.
And I kind of got, I was looking at some corporate kind of jobs right out of retirement. And one of the things that I noticed is that sort of real health platforms with nice fitness centers and on-site programs and things are commonplace in corporate America as a benefit for employees. But for these kind of workers, like, first responders, they don't get that. This is a foreign concept to them. So the idea that something like that would be available to them, that sole purpose was just to make them better, healthier, stronger people who could do their work better and do more than survive their career is such a foreign concept that that's one of the hardest pitches to the rank and file person right away. Like, we literally are here just to help you get better and be healthier. So it is 100% necessary. And if this profession is to go, continue in a positive direction, and all that we ask of the people who do this work, then this has to become a central focus for every agency.
Yeah, as I heard what you were saying at the very beginning, and just what I heard you say there, it's almost like nothing really happens unless something really happens, like a bad situation or a scenario, and then it's coming back to, oh, well, let's clean that up moving forward. Yeah. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but if in the BLET training, if they were to hear some of these concepts, then maybe even these younger people who have no life experience, like, here's how you can take care of yourself through this profession.
Yes.
We're going to give you some tools. And so at least they come out with some things they can draw upon. And when they, and knowing, yes, I'm going to see all this stuff. I'm going to experience all this stuff. I'm going to have back problems from sitting in a car all day. I'm going to have mobility issues.
What are you doing?
Yada. Right. Like, oh, I remember them talking about this. Like, I know what I can try now. And it is an unfortunate thing because I think sometimes even just in life, that's how things are done. So not just even in the law enforcement and first responder communities, but just, it's like we wait until we get a bad test result to do something about like what we're eating or whatever else. So I thank you for expanding upon that and just sharing what you've seen happen there. And so what could an agency do that wants to bring health and wellness initiatives in, but maybe they just have no budget, they have no money? What could they do in this situation?
And that, I think it's sad to say, but ultimately it comes down to resources. Agencies are always, and not being at that command level, I can't even imagine how to decide on equipment versus training versus staff and payroll and trying to get raises and all that. So, it's a very difficult proposition right away. But I guess the positive is everybody, like, I'm not spoken to a chief, a sheriff, or even an officer who doesn't believe that health and wellness is a priority. So then the question becomes, what do we do about it? So knowledge definitely is the key. If a great analogy is, I was fortunate enough to be involved in the rewrite of the mental illness, which is a 40-hour block. Actually, when I first got there, it was a 16-hour block, and we moved it to a 40-hour block that all recruits have to get. In that new 40 hours, which I think we rewrote about maybe 12 years ago or so, we talk about officer wellness. We talk about officer suicide. We talk about, all the sort of de-escalation skills and stuff that you would apply to a person in the field that's in crisis. You can also apply to yourself as you determine, hey, am I a victim of the trauma that I have seen and experienced? Because that's what we realize. It doesn't have to happen to you, but if you just show up on these fatalities and baby deaths and stuff long enough, it's got to go somewhere where you're going to, so all of this was hid in that. And in that time, I'm not saying it's a direct correlation, but because it was now out there, now you see more agencies that have on staff psychologists. You see a cultural shift where it's okay to ask for help and even say, listen, I was so rocked by what I saw yesterday. I'd like the day off today. Or even a supervisor who comes in and says, listen, you may not think that was a big deal, but we want you to take the weekend off and just be with your family, that kind of thing. You will see more of this directly from that. And this is more in our kind of live well pillar that Doable Health has.
Yeah, it is.
So if they could somehow do the same, and a lot of this stuff happens informally, in sort of an informal peer support way in agencies now. So that's another thing that you hear a lot of agencies talking about is how do we have peer support programs? Well, that needs to not just be for these issues. It needs to be where you're trained to look at the physical appearance of somebody and say, listen, are you interested in getting in better shape? We have some ideas for that. Obviously, I'm on board with Doable. We can do it for people, but there's always a cost involved. So I understand. I know you do a lot of work with grants. apparently there are a lot of grant opportunities out there we'll just never know about. And the grant process itself seems so daunting that people, don't even try to go down that road. And I feel most for smaller agencies, because most big agencies know all this stuff, but the smaller ones, the town I live in, there's 8 officers in an agency. There's no telling, like they probably don't have the ability to do any of this. But if there were some resources available to them that can help them kind of start initiating things from the inside, however small, all of us can remember people in our professions that had huge impact on us. Maybe you watched the way they did things, or the way they handled themselves, or their physical or emotional condition, or their communication ability, or whatever. It's like, I want to be like that. And if you're very fortunate, maybe that person would consider being a mentor to you. On the other side, you've seen other people where you're like, I definitely don't want to do that. So I don't want to be like,
you see, oh, that's probably not a good way of handling things, or So you may not know what you want, but you don't want that.
Exactly. So somehow formalizing those conversations, more inside any size agency. I think half the battle is won, which is there's this huge recognition that if we're going to really cultivate a population that's willing to go 25, 30 years under these conditions, something has to be done. The question is now, with limited resources, how do we do it? So.
And that you were talking about the grants, and that is how I help a lot of times, and help just kind of send opportunities that are available. And sometimes they have a dedicated person to do grants at their agency. Sometimes they don't. So we could step in and help them if we need to. But with a smaller agency, sometimes I would think a lot of that falls through the crack. And there's been a lot of progress as far as helping them to deal, like the, things they're seeing out on their job, and helping them to recognize those signs of trauma and things like that. Still, probably that what we call more of a holistic view of a person. Like, it's not just that. It's not just mental health. It's a huge piece, but it's sleep, it's physical health, it's what you're eating, it's, those chronic conditions that you have.
Absolutely.
And so I know there's a lot of work to be done in this area to
Well,
even be able to have those. But I heard you say peer support is a great one to bring in as far as what an agency could do. Maybe there's, some things for physical, or even just, I think, an example that a chief or some of the higher ups can set too, and be willing to be available for their staff. Yeah.
And a lot of times their particular buy-in is going to have a huge influence, even in large agencies. If you have a chief that is committed to their own health and wellness, and they present that way, it's going to come down and work from the top down. And we've seen it the opposite, where they just didn't care. And so that sort of stuff just got pushed off to the side in lieu of what they felt were other priorities. But none of this is going to work if the people don't work. So you can have the best equipment, the best patrol cars, the best weapon systems, the best technology, but it's those people that are on the front lines working this thing. Those are the ones that they've got to be taken care of. And I used to believe that, hey, we have to just hit this at the academy level and really focus on the young people. But coming out of the retirement end, there's this strange phenomenon in the first responder culture where people die like within the first 5 years of their retirement, because they were at such a high level all the time, and they had such purpose-driven work. And now all of a sudden, they're just out in the abyss. And it's not a financial issue because they have a pension, but it's like all of a sudden, all those chronic health things just start to happen to them, and cancer and heart disease and diabetes come up in huge numbers. So to make the problem even bigger, or the scope even bigger, we have to look at the recruits, and we have to service the retirees, because you can't forget about them. Because a lot of agencies want them to come back and do some work and help out with background checks and some training and stuff like that. And then everybody else in between. So, I think Doable Health going on this first responder mission is at the perfect time, because it's a platform that, if it could be reproduced and hit nationwide, it could single-handedly change the first responder profession and make it healthier on every level, on all the pillars that we talk about.
Yeah, I kind of pictured when you were saying this, like this vibrant young person going into, the academy, and they come out this haggard, worn down, and I hate to say it that way. I know
Sure,
it's
that's
not really
exactly
that
true.
picture, but they're not what they could be when they in their career. I mean, as far as maybe just the way they feel and, unless they're intentional about the things that they're doing along that journey. As hard as it is, and we know this, no matter if you're a first responder or just you or I, we have to do have to make those choices every day. And we can say to ourselves, one thing we can say, is this taking me toward health or towards disease? It's a filter through which we can put our thoughts and our actions. Well, as we wrap up with just a couple minutes left, tell us a little bit about what we have a new Respond Well pillar for
Yes.
doable health. So our pillars traditionally have been eat well, live well, move well. Now Respond Well is going to be really targeted to law enforcement and first responders. What are some of the features that are present in this pillar?
Well, it came up as, I really learned of the pillars a couple of years ago when I came aboard. And as we start looking at it, I envision this circle that created that just keeps kind of feeding back on itself. Because we know healthier people, like healthier officers, if they're physically stronger, mentally, emotionally stronger, stress, their finances, all the things that we deal with in the primary pillars is under control, they are just going to be better at their job. And then the better at the job they are, and they don't have that feeling of burnout, then they're going to make that time for the things that are going to make them feel better. So it's this wonderful circle that just builds upon itself. And it's just getting that motion going. So peer support is going to be a huge part of it. We have some amazing folks in Doable that are able to kind of create a great template. And I could walk into this agency up here and say, listen, do you want a peer support program? Here's how to make it happen. And you're going to see some immediate results. There's a lot of training aspects. So I've been, in the training area for so long. But when you break those down into individual skills, and we're really going to create these slices that are available for people to watch that are part of the Doable platform, it's going to include small little tactical exercises that you can do together with your squad mates or even by yourself that not only make you physically healthier, but make you more confident in the defensive tactics that you might have to use that day. So it's true functional movement for the first responder. Because I know for a fact, there are officers out there that start at their shift and say, I really hope I don't have to deal with a really bad person today because I don't know if I'm capable of handling that. And to have that level of doubt, it's going to...
That's the first problem, right? If that doubt is present.
It is. Yeah. So all of that together, and the Respond Well pillar is going to bring together the elements of the other three in very specific practical exercises and things that you can use that day that are going to make your next tour of duty just that much better. So the training modules are being created now. The peer support program is being created now. A lot of the tips on de-escalation and emotional regulation. We actually have a training on, for example, if you listen to Sully before he landed the plane in the Hudson, there was not a change of inflection in his voice. Yet a lot of our first responders get a little verbal resistance on a traffic stop and then just like lose their cool. Like, what does that guy know that we don't know? And I've actually interviewed working pilots and training pilots who have explained the processes. That's part of the Respond Well. So you can take that and apply it to yourself and have processes in place that help you regulate yourself emotionally. That's just going to keep your blood pressure down. It's going to have wonderful physiological effects, but also confidence effects. And, and on the spiritual side, you'll feel stronger spiritually. And then hopefully we keep talking about guardian community. You will share these ideas. You'll share these exercises with your squad mates, especially the ones that you have already decided, like, that guy needs help. That woman needs help. What can I do for them? We do an amazing job of projecting our investigative abilities outward to the public, but yet we will see people suffering that we work next to and have no idea how to help them. That's what the Respond Well pillar is also going to help. Very excited. We got a lot of work to do, a lot of exciting things, but it's coming.
Yeah, we are excited about this and how it can be used as a big tool just moving forward. And and you and I are going to dive into more specific topics over, the course of our podcast seasons. And for this first season, I've been telling our listeners we're doing more of the foundations of health and the foundations of doable as well. And just in the future, we will have opportunities to dive in a little bit more specifically to some of the things we talked about today. So thanks, Mac. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate
Oh,
it.
I would be remiss if I didn't say what. So now my primary motivation no longer is because I think I'm on a good track, to get myself to 100. That's my goal. But I have a stress that I was ill prepared for. My son decided 5 years ago to become a state trooper.
Oh, yeah.
And he like literally is my motivation for just staying in this fight and helping because he's the model. Like, he works out at the gym every day and he's got a great support network around him. And he's able to benefit, I think, from a lot of the mistakes that I made early on. We debrief all of his calls and so forth. He's seen some horrendous things in his 5 years now. So in the Respond Well platform, you will see him training along with us in some of the training modules and sharing some of the wisdom that a young trooper has that is at the top of his profession and just continues to do things in the right way. And he's even been in a shooting. We'll probably talk about that at some point and come out of that as well as a person can in a situation like that. So that's my new motivation, along with all the people I still feel responsible for. And if there's any contribution that I can give, I will continue to do it. But it's also getting to work with folks like you that have this extensive knowledge of how to bring these ideas and to fruition and then apply them to people. So it is such a privilege to be.
Well, and I'm glad you ended with that because we do know that as humans, as just people, if we can have that perspective of what we want our future to look like, of course, we don't control everything, but that gives us an opportunity. It makes those choices easier for us to decide those daily things we're going to bring in, the ways that we're going to take care of ourselves, because we do have that purpose and we do have that vision for ourselves. And yes, it will be enlightening for everybody to get the opportunity to hear from your son. And you get to be not only dad, but peer support too.
Take
So
a great role.
what a gift that is. Yeah. Thanks so much, Mac. And we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you, Cheryl. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. As we wrap up another insightful episode of Making Health Doable, we want to express our gratitude to you for joining us on this journey toward better health and wellness.
At Doable Health, we're not just a podcast. We're a dedicated team of physicians, board-certified health coaches, and law enforcement experts.
And together, we're on a mission to serve employees and first responders, providing coaching workshops and masterclasses tailored to conquer the challenges of stress, anxiety, and burnout.
But our commitment doesn't stop there. We're also passionate about improving wellness for individuals like you, offering at-home lab testing and personalized coaching to support your unique needs.
Because at the end of the day, whether you're an employee, a first responder, or simply an individual striving for better health, we're all human. And we firmly believe that life can feel better for everyone when health is made doable.
So as you go about your day, remember that you're not alone on your journey toward wellness. We're here to support you, encourage you, and provide you with the tools you need to thrive.
So stay tuned for more inspiring conversations, expert insights, and actionable advice in our future episodes. Be sure to like and subscribe on your podcast platform.
And don't forget to visit our website at dooable.com, dooable.com, for additional resources and updates. Until next time, remember that health is within reach.
And together we can make it doable.